Hello, this is Justin Fireeisen, and I am here on 88.7 WRFW River Falls, Wisconsin. And I got a very special guest today. I'm here with Brent from Nerdy Nuggets.
How's it going, my fellow nerds?
Listen to him on Fridays at 3 o'clock. I have a question for you, Brent. Is that chicken or gold nuggets?
Chicken or gold nuggets? We're talking chicken nuggets. I always reference the McNugs on my show. I love a good 20-piece of chicken McNuggets. Oh, there's nothing... brings me back to my childhood, really.
So, on his show last Friday, I didn't catch it live. I had class, but I watched a Facebook live stream at like 9 o'clock on that Friday. Well, in bed, just chillaxing. He talked about IGN's top 100 horror films, and Jaws was number 6. That's a personal blow to my heart because I absolutely love that movie.
Do you think it should really belong in horror films, though? Because when I think of the horror franchise, the horror genre, rather, I don't think of Jaws. Jaws is almost in its own category of, just animal... scary movies with animals as the villain. I don't associate with Jaws with the horror franchise at all.
I think Jaws is like the... if you consider any of Hitchcock's movies horror, it's the psychological thriller aspect. And I just think Jaws isn't just a great horror movie. It's one of those great films that it trans genres. And when you think of Jaws, yes, you think of the big shark, the Bruce. But you also think of the small character moments, like when he's talking to his son at the dinner table and he puts his hand on his cheek and stuff. And I haven't seen The Shining and I haven't seen The Exorcist, which were 1 and 2. But I'd love to talk about Jaws. Another thing on that list was Cabin in the Woods. I actually did one of the toughest decisions I ever made. I needed to go to Walmart and get a new watch battery because I was lost without my watch. And I had, should I go see it, which was still in theaters? I had a couple hours to kill. Or should I stay home and watch Cabin in the Woods? And this went down not just to which movie I wanted, but which experience did I want.
I hope you went for it.
I did not. I saved the money. I watched the movie I already had at home. Plus, I'm not really a horror guy, and I've seen both movies before, but it's one thing to be in the theater with the lights down with other people, or stay in your home with the lights on, and it's still going to be scary, but it's not going to be as scary, and which experience did I want that day?
You didn't want to be, sleeping with the lights on. I get that.
Yeah, and the first time I saw it, I didn't have a morning class, and I did today. So I decided I'll stay home. Cabin in the Woods is not as scary as it, but I think what makes Cabin in the Woods such a great movie is it takes fun at the horror genre.
Now, is this the Liam Hemsworth?
It's Chris Hemsworth.
Okay.
I know it's confusing because he has short hair in this movie.
I always get the Hemsworths mixed up.
And then I decided on this because Thor Ragnarok's coming out later, and I'm like, Chris Hemsworth in this movie has got my boy Joss Whedon. I love Joss Whedon. Buffy the Vampire Slayer I haven't seen, but I'm a huge Firefly fan. I love the Avengers. He wrote Toy Story, and he wrote that film. And also, Drew Goddard was directed it, and I talked about The Martian last week, and he wrote The Martian and directed Cabin in the Woods.
I love The Martian.
I love
just a little squirrel there. Love The Martian. I'm a big science nerd, though, so.
Yeah, so Cabin in the Woods was one of those films which it's not scary, and it's horror-centric, but it plays more on the tropes, and I think that's just so unique, and I haven't seen another movie like it.
Mm-hmm.
And another film which it wasn't on the list because it's not really a horror film, but I consider it a Halloween film, and it's E.T. It's one of those films that you don't have to watch in October, you don't have to watch it for Halloween, but one of the key pivotal moments in E.T. is they have E.T., they dress him up as a ghost, they think it's Elliot and his brother and his sister trick-or-treating.
Yeah, but no, it's E.T.
It's E.T. and he's sneaking him out so he can phone his family and get back to where he wants. And I talked about E.T. extensively a couple weeks now when I saw it the first time. And it's just, Steven Spielberg is just perfect.
Funny aside, so I was watching DC Legends of Tomorrow last night, because that's one of my shows on the CW. They did an ode to E.T. One of the scenes led to it was an allusion to E.T. They were flying and they were on bikes and they had an extraterrestrial in a basket. It was funny.
Well, even Lego Jurassic World, in one of the credits, you have the ET over the moon, and everybody's freaked out because it's Lego ET next. And ET's just a perfect movie because I talked about this in my review a couple weeks ago. It's on YouTube. It's one of those movies where he wanted to make a sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind of what if this alien was left behind, but he also had another idea of he had a rough divorce. His parents divorced when he was a young child, and he had a hard time dealing with that. So he combined those two movies to make one movie.
Huh.
And I think this is so good because you have the boy and his friend Alien. You have the loner that's dealing with his parents' divorce. But it is so much more than that. And I talked about this. There's audition on the internet for Henry Thomas where he nails the audition. And Steven Spielberg did so many movies with so many great actors. There's only one actor he ever hired after one audition, and that was Henry Thomas, the child from E.T.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kind of improv'd of, what if the government wants to take away your only friend, which is this alien you found in the woods? And he just starts crying and screaming. And just thinking about this audition for the movie, it's so heartfelt. And that's the audition. This is one of the best child actors in any film ever. And I think that's hard because you look at, there's a handful of good ones, but there's a lot of ones which just fall under the radar for bad child actor performances.
You really didn't see much of him, though, afterwards, did you? Or did we?
We did not, but this film just nails it, and it's like the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where the kid was in one movie, and then he saw it, and then he didn't, like, I did not really want to be an actor, and the kid from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory actually went on to be a doctor or veterinarian or something like that.
Nice.
Which is so funny. Moving on now, another Halloween film, Ghostbusters, and I'm not talking about the 2016 remake. I'm talking about the 1984 one.
I heard bad things about the remake.
I am a huge Orville guy, and one of the comment sections for the new episode, which was amazing if you watched the Orville, they're like, it's all about how social media ran this planet, and how it's all based on upvotes and downvotes, and if you had 100 million 10 million downvotes, then you got corrected. And they're just saying, if this was real life, all those people from the associated with the 2016 Ghostbusters reboot would be corrected, and how they'd basically be lobotomized and basically walking zombies. But the original Ghostbusters is so good. I love this cast. Ivan Reitman directed it. He made one of my favorite movies, Draft Day. Not a lot of people heard of it, but I love that film with Kevin Costner.
The Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Browns, and it's so relevant, even though it's 3 years old now, because they're always at the top of the draft.
Well, and funny story, they actually just flubbed a trade, like seriously. The trade deadline. I know this is a Squirrel Nut related movies, but they were trying to do a trade with the Bengals, and they essentially decided, shook hands with the Bengals. Well, the Bengals let the NFL know. However, the Browns didn't, because they were too happy celebrating that they were getting a new quarterback. So the trade deadline dropped, and the trade didn't go through because they didn't call the NFL about it.
That is hilarious. Cleveland Browns. But besides Ivan Reitman, who's one of those underrated directors, and he's made a lot of great films, and Draft Day is one that I can note of, Bill Murray, Peter Venkman, not just one of the great characters in this movie, one of the great characters of all time.
Yeah, great actor.
Dan Aykroyd as Raymond Stantz, and he actually wrote the script with Harold Ramis, who's Egon. So those two worked on the script for this movie, and this is just packed full of jokes. Sigourney Weaver as Dana Barrett and Rick Moranis as Louis Tully. Now, trivia time. Which one is the gatekeeper and which one is the keymaster?
Which one's the gatekeeper and which one's the keymaster? Gatekeeper was Sigourney Weaver.
That is correct.
I mean, let's be honest, biologically speaking, it was kind of a biology joke at the same time there.
This movie is chock full of those. Like, do you want to get inside me? I think there's already 2 or 3 people inside you already when she's possessed.
Yeah.
And then they have great jokes about the proton packs and stuff.
Don't cross the streams, man.
And this is just packed of great lines. Ray, when someone asks if you're a god, say yes.
Yes, say yes.
And when the receptionist is flirting with Egon and they're talking about what you do for fun, he's like, I collect spores, molds, and funguses.
That sounds very stimulating.
It's like, it's hilarious. I love this. And I just love when they go to the mayor and they're just talking about how stuff is going to go down, and it's like Bill Murray's character says, there's going to be human sacrifices, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. And this is just, it's so good. And then pick the form of your destructor. Don't think about anything. I tried to think of the most harmless thing, something I love from my childhood, something that would never ever destroy us. Mr. Stay Puft. We used to roast Stay Puft marshmallows by the fire at Camp Wakanda, where he tries so hard to think of nothing, and then he thinks of what's going to be the most harmless thing, and this giant 50-foot tall Stay Puft Marshmallow Man comes walking down the street. This is what makes Ghostbusters great.
In his defense, I don't think he was expecting like a 50-foot tall Mr. Stay Puft.
No, he wasn't. But it's hilarious because this giant marshmallow mascot, it's like if Ronald McDonald walked down the street destroying buildings.
He's got like a McNug launcher. Just
yeah, or like Colonel Sanders, or it's just like there's so many different of these icons of all these different restaurants or Walmart, like Spot the Target dog, just walking down the street, like breathing fire and stuff. And besides the great acting in this film, we got to talk about that song. The 2016 version, they had Fall Out Boy do that song, but this is a song that's in Lego Rock Band, the Who You Gonna Call? Ghostbusters.
That's a classic.
It's so good. And Ghostbusters 2 I watched recently, and I loved it as a kid, but it kind of falls flat. It's still enjoyable because it's got that great cast.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But when I'm going to go back and watch a Ghostbusters movie, it has to be the original. So, another film that's not considered a horror film, but was on a list of best Halloween films, and it kind of surprised me. But then when I thought about it, yeah, it's about breaking and entering, it's about kidnapping, revenge, and torture in a post-apocalyptic society.
I'm not really picking up what you're putting down with It Should Belong There. Explain this to me.
It is Monsters, Inc. They kidnap Boo. They try to torture her to produce more stream energy. It is in the post-apocalyptic film. If you consider the entire Pixar theory...
Yeah, now you're getting into the Pixar theory. That's going deep there, Justin.
And I'm just saying, this is... You got two best buddy monsters, which their day-to-day job is collecting screams.
Yeah, that's kind of Halloween related. Not gonna lie, and especially with the monster aspect to it.
And it's one of those films that you're looking for a Halloween film, and I know most kids are going to be trick-or-treating, but if you got really young kids and you don't want to be out all night, Monsters, Inc. would be a great film to just put on and enjoy. And it's not really considered a Halloween film, but I kept seeing it on these lists of best Halloween films, and I'm just like, they convinced me that this is going to be like my go-to Halloween film for the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, and you're not getting your pants scared off.
No, I mean...
Which I like.
Yeah, so, Brent, do you have any go-to Halloween films?
Okay, this is going to sound kind of weird. It kind of goes along with Monsters, Inc. But when I think Halloween, I think Harry Potter.
That is a good one. Again, I wouldn't probably put the two together, but you got the witches, you got the wizards.
You got trolls, you got goblins, and they celebrate Halloween like in a ridiculous fashion.
Well, they celebrate every holiday in a ridiculous fashion.
Okay, true.
You are living in a mansion.
It's almost like every day is Halloween at Hogwarts, which would be awesome. I mean, they're drinking pumpkin juice, just, willy-nilly, for crying out loud. So, yeah, Harry Potter, I have been watching the last couple weekends. I have been just slowly getting through the entire series because I think Harry Potter when I think Halloween.
And I'm gonna set up Thor Ragnarok. Have Taika Waititi is directing it. He has one of the perfect Halloween films that I discovered on Saturday. Have you heard of What We Do in the Shadows?
No, I have not.
It is a mockumentary about 5 vampires living in a New Zealand flat, and it is directed by Taika Waititi. He's the new Thor Ragnarok, and then he also Jermaine Clement, and they both star as characters. Jermaine Clement is in Flight of the Conchords, and he has I'm very familiar with him because he's a very good voiceover actor. He did the Prison King in The Muppets Most Wanted, Tamatoa the Crab in Moana, and he was Sauron in the Lego Batman movie.
Ooh.
And so they got these 5 vampires, and they're living in this New Zealand flat. And they're all different ages. You got like the very old Victorian vampire, and then up to the one that just got converted a couple months ago. And they're just like arguing about, you need to do the dishes. And it's like, but we're vampires, we don't do the dishes. Vampires don't do dishes. And they got different ideology of how to run their apartment. Like one of the older vampires says, maybe we should get a couple slaves. And like, you can't do slaves. Slavery is illegal. But we should have slaves.
I'm gonna have to look this movie up. That sounds like fun.
It is hilarious. This is Spinal Tap, but with vampires. And they turn this new guy into a vampire, and then his human friend keeps hanging around, and they're like, you can't bring a human into a vampire lore. We all want to eat him. And they're like, Stu's a nice guy. Nobody eats Stu. And you have the new vampire that's like, hey girl, I'm like Twilight, I am a vampire. And then the older vampires are like Twilight ruined vampires, and you have that whole dynamic.
It did, by the way.
And then you have their relationship with the werewolves. And they're like, we're werewolves, not swearwolves. Werewolves, not swearwolves. And that's so funny. And it's just, you got the jockey werewolves versus the vampires that are like, ugh, not you guys again. And this is just one of those comedy films, which I heard of it, but I haven't watched it. But seeing how Taika Waititi, the guy that's doing Thor Ragnarok that comes out on Friday, he did this, and it's one of the funniest comedies I've ever seen. What We Do in the Shadows. Look it up.
I'm gonna have to. I'm excited.
Now I'm gonna do a short break, and we're gonna go full on into Marvel.
Get ready, nerds.